All right, there we go. All right, now I will next talk about Art Nouveau, which is late 19th and early 20th centuries. Let me show you this here. Okay. So the according to the Abrams Guide, the little section on Art Nouveau, states that Art Nouveau is considered the first modern style, and modern in quotation marks, I'm not sure why. As the name suggests, it sought to throw off the restraints of tradition by inventing a design vocabulary for the industrial age. Born as the 19th century was ending, it flourished for a brief but glorious time in the early part of the 20th. Just having looked at Frank Lloyd Wright and seeing some of the things being made in the United States at the same time, I think that I would qualify that statement by saying it's the first modern European style. Now, this is this image here by Henry van de Velde, who is Belgian, is a pretty cool object. It's looks a bit like Rococo, and it is sort of like known to have borrowed some of its kind of like flourishes and asymmetry and kind of the fun of Rococo. Here is a desk. So before I go too much farther, I want to make sure I talk a little bit more about Art Nouveau. So it is considered to be a revolt against all that neoclassicism and what is referred to as 19th century historicism. So all of those revival styles, this was meant as, this is really just people who wanted to create something original and just leave that stuff behind. So forms are copied from nature, so there's a lot of organic, like symbolic, organic form, and asymmetry. There's a thing that was called the whiplash curve that is emblematic of Art Nouveau, especially the continental. I'll show you a presentation of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, who was in Scotland, who is, well, maybe I should have shown that first, but oh well. He had has some similarities. There's around this time, like in Vienna, there are a lot of modern ideas going around, where a lot of artists and designers and architects, they really wanted to use these new, I guess, sort of exploit or explore the possibilities of the industrial age. And so they really wanted to come up with something new. And in some cases it was like arts and crafts, or even like the later movements that came from it, where they wanted to leave the machine behind. Some wanted to embrace the machine. This is a Tiffany lamp. Very organic. I mean, you can look at that and say organic pretty easily. It's like a creature. This is a silk, wool and silk embroidery. That's a good illustration of that whiplash curve in Art Nouveau. You see in Art Nouveau, you see the application of it to graphic design. So graphic design is kind kind of becomes a I think it's almost like it becomes a branch of design more in the late 19th century, like printed illustrations that are made from woodcuts or lithographs. It's kind of all around this just sort of like it has something in common with the Victorian naturalism. This desire for organic-looking things. Edvard Munch, The Scream, a kind of a famous painting. This like really everything kind of flowing, and this is pretty especially for 1899. This is pretty far out there in terms of modern art. You can imagine someone who like a patron who enjoyed neoclassical imagery or just like that like the realism, looking at this and just thinking, well, this guy is a terrible artist. This is about an idea. It's about expressiveness and expressionism, and it is. There was a lot of anxiety going around, this sort of sense of alienation, and if psychology right around this time, Freud was getting things going in Vienna, so there was a very, I guess you could say, a very emotional age. So Art Nouveau in Belgium. So you see it in the ironwork very easily, and this interior. So this is a good example of Art Nouveau. You see the industrial, like the cast iron and wrought iron, but that mural on the wall is really gorgeous. And so this flowing curves, things that look like stylized vines, just appear to be growing all over this. And Victor Horta was another Art Nouveau designer from Belgium. I have to say the Belgians did some nice stuff in this. And here, that's just it's like, what do you say? That's just beautiful. And very unique. So novelty is part of what this is about. That banister was an opportunity to create this organic, almost like like a tree limb growing through the space. And here, love what they do with the brickwork, with that glazed brick. So Victor Horta, this is his home. So they design furniture, and really it's kind of a thing to design all your furniture and your interior as well. And this is the kind of thing this is like I guess it's like an architect's home is an opportunity. It really can become like a laboratory, or just like a place where the architect can experiment. And a department store now torn down. So a large commercial building. Similar idea with that skylight and the open atrium area in the center. And you see the this like arcade of the different floors above. In France, Hector Guimard, that's just a beautiful entrance gate. So very, exaggerated, asymmetrical. It is highly original. And that, that color, that's kind of seafoam green, and the, texture of the wall. It's really pretty spectacular. Nice and light in there with all that white. This stairway again, you kind of get the idea. Stairway is really this great opportunity for designing, and some of the furniture. Oh, see here, I love this like weird blobby organic wallpaper design. It's really, it's kind of trippy in a way. So you see the difference between like this William Morris Blackthorn, which is it's almost like, by comparison, you could look at the William Morris is like Baroque, and then the Guimard is Rococo. I'm not sure they would agree with that comparison, but the symmetry and there's a ton of detail in the William Morris wallpaper. It's very organized and symmetrical. Furniture, I love what this is like. There's a certain irrational quality to the Art Nouveau that I love, and that I think is very important because you could design furniture that functions the same way, and it doesn't have to look like this. It could be much less interesting. But why? We're designing things. Why just make the same thing over and over again? So this is where you could see a good departure from the kinds of imagery used in the classic, like with these classical revival styles. It does have a little bit of the appearance of Gothic. It's almost like it looks like they're using crockets from Gothic ornament. And here, it's like a little house from a fairy tale, which is sort of goes along with some of those like books published of fairy tales. Some of them were published around this time, and they sort of got their look from Art Nouveau. So really, I just love the crazy, creative, really ornament that they put on things. Very organic again, organic. The metro stations for the Paris subway. And I love the way that viney looking ornament looks animated. And beautiful, menacing, but still beautiful. Typography is an area where you have Art Nouveau typography, which goes along with the graphic design. And they're just nutty. I love it. I'm not sure, well, I guess you would have a ladder for putting things if those things on the top are shelves. Not very practical. But the idea, practical was not really the idea. Chairs, really nice looking chairs. Not unlike like you see the tonneau, which is earlier with the bent wood. So they're shaping the wood in in interesting ways without a whole lot of carving. There is some carving, but think back to the Tonnet, which is really much simpler. But that bent wood, sort of almost like it sort of like opened the door for this. A bedroom suite. Armoire with marquetry. I love the mirror on one side, and that that chair makes it look like there's this big like wooden thing stuck to the mirror. That's just a reflection of the chair in the room. It's like the Rococo. It's over the top. The back of that chair is just absurd. But this is nice stuff. I think it's largely just beautiful. This dressing table with those not very useful pieces of like that wooden structure that comes down the front. But hey, why not? It's still beautiful. And really, I think it's an achievement in terms of the technique of the woodworking. So that's the French and Belgian Art Nouveau. Oh, I have to look at. One moment, I'm going to get the Macintosh. Just have to go to the folder. I thought I had it open. Okay, I got it. All right. Macintosh. So Macintosh is a little, he's Scottish, not English, and he he's kind of like it's sometimes referred to as the Glasgow School of Design. He and his wife and two friends. He and his wife were really the two people who made this work. Like they really sort of like envisioned this, like sort of dreamt up this this style, this organic style, and it brought in Celtic ornament, which is really kind of a new idea. The standard of classicism meant that what would be considered like a vernacular style or a local, like ethnic style, was really just not up to the level of Greek and Roman ornament. But he disagreed. And here's an image of the Willow Tea Room, which was restored in the 1980s, which unfortunately kind of looks like it. but those really super tall back chairs, Frank Lloyd Wright did the same kind of thing. It has those little small square piercings. And so that height, that kind of really exaggerated height, is another example of the irrational, this kind of like this sort of exaggeration that Art Nouveau liked to employ. This music room in the house for an art lover, he designed it in 1900. The project was never built in his lifetime, and everything, all the plans and instruction, all of the drawings and plans existed for it. And so in the 1990s, it was built. A group of a Friends of Macintosh, I forget the name of the group that built this, but they put the money together and they made it. So this is a Macintosh built in the 1990s, which is pretty interesting and kind of rare because it's a lot fresher. But this, he liked white with pastels. It's kind of like rose, like pinkish color. And those pendant lamps they have those what look like little rosebuds where they attach to the ceiling. Really quite beautiful. So here, Hill House. And this entry hall. So this really looks, this is like, looks almost like Frank Lloyd Wright, Prairie School. Yeah, and they knew it, Frank Lloyd Wright visited Europe, and this is where, Frank Lloyd Wright was one of the first architects to be known in Europe as good and doing a very specifically American style of architecture. So we start to get into the era where the Americans start to, show up and produce something that the Europeans will actually pay attention to. Macintosh, they're really working with similar ideas, though, stripping away all that heavy classical ornament, all of the excessive ornament and decoration that's the Victorian age is known for. It was very important to a lot of people. So Victorian was in the United States. It was in England and Scotland, and they had the same. Certain people had the same attitude, was just clean it up. Nice lighting here. But I see that pink, like rosy pink color. The rose was an important motif for Macintosh. And here you can see this has got some similarities to that French ornament, like that French wallpaper. There's his rose. He's he's designing the furniture and the interior and the the wallpaper and the lighting. So that stylized rose motif appears throughout. He's designing walls, like an electrical wall sconce. This is a new, it's a new thing to design now, and got some, like the use of the art glass and it's actually if it can be compared to Frank Lloyd Wright's designs, it's a lot nicer. It's simpler, more graceful, much more graceful. Here is the drawing room in Hill House. This is Macintosh's residence. I love the the lightness of it, designing, everything down to the curtains. Fireplace, built-in shelving, everything. They design it. It's like kind of design everything. Why not when you're doing this? Nice, this bedroom. That ladder back chair, again, similar to those chairs in the that Willow tea room, ridiculously tall. Not. It's like a chair does not need to be that tall. That's ornament. The built-in wardrobe. Again, that ridiculous ladder back chair. The table with that, like the legs, these like thin legs set at a diagonal. When you're, if you're designing furniture 100 years ago, it's still like there's a lot of furniture that's already been done. So you got to try different things to come up with something that is new and interesting. So that is, kind of wonderfully weird in my, to me, which I like novelty. Sometimes I even, I can say that I might not like something like, I wouldn't want that in my home, but I like it that he did it because he's doing something, trying to push a boundary. And that's very important in giving us new things. We're not very few of us are ever going to be an innovator. Innovation takes a lot of work to really, truly bring something into the world that did not really exist before is tough, and it takes a lot of time. You have to know a lot about what is already there in order to come up with an innovation. But sometimes you just do something that's interesting and weird like this. I'm all for it. So you have the Glasgow School of Art. I like some of this, like this wrought iron detail is really gorgeous. And it's that same stylized, rose motif gets used in the window detail. In a lot of this design, you don't have to do that for the window to function, but it's, why design something and make it look like everything else? Like those nice big windows, the interior, everything. I mean, the darkness of the interior has to do with the color of the wood and the material, but it's just fascinating to me how like they're trying with some of these industrial materials where it looks kind of dungeon-esque. And those pendant lights look more like they're like chains hanging from the ceiling. Not to drag him too badly here, but yeah, I think to me the pendant lights are some of the more interesting things in here. All right, so that's Macintosh. So Macintosh, and then we had the Belgian and French Art Nouveau, and lastly, Gaudí. Gaudí is in Spain, or was in Spain. And look at that. So in Spain, since Spain was like the southern half of Spain was Islamic for centuries, there is a lot of Islamic design influence, what is called Moorish. The term Moor is M-O-O-R. It's a more generic term for, which is the term the country Morocco is related to that. But Arabic, Northern African, Islamic. Very strong influence in Spain, especially southern Spain. So this is a mosque cathedral of Cordoba. Depending on the century, it was either a mosque or a cathedral. This is a really like a Romanesque hypostyle hall. And you see that alternating color of stone and brick in the arches. And lovely, like the arches kind of riding on the arches. Very interesting. So here, Gaudí was probably the greatest at making it look organic, drippy, and strange. So like, what he did with the concrete and stone is impressive. But, it's almost like it looks like it was just some of his architecture looks like it was just kind of poured on the site. Just like a big bucket and just like poured this building out. But it's wonderful, in terms of how it looks. Bear in mind that a lot of this new architecture might have been challenging to build. And it is the problem of a lot of either experimental or avant-garde architecture, is that it sometimes doesn't function that well, especially in terms of leaking. That's true of Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings. Some of them are just, it's the combination of the design and the construction, which is not always the architect's fault. More contemporary architects, they're just, it's challenging to get, like when you have a new idea, there are going to be a lot of the, a lot of the construction contractors that have never built anything like it before. And so construction is always a challenge with this stuff. But, from an aesthetic point of view, I love looking at this. Is this is sculpture and organic. It looks like the back of a dinosaur. Here's the interior stairwell with a skylight above. An interior, I love that ceiling. Very, that you can see like the, really kind of almost just like playful application of the surfaces where they just kind of start wherever they feel like it. And the contrasting surfaces, there's different types of stone and maybe plaster work. So, Gaudí is kind of like a rougher version of the French and the Belgian. Design furniture, as a sculptural object, I think that's quite beautiful. I'd want a cushion to sit in it. Some more furniture. Casa Mila in Barcelona. And again, this really interesting. I mean, like, all of that is very deliberately built, but it looks so organic. It's like it looks like something just carved out of a cliff face. And the grill work, like that iron railing is, it's plant life. The texture of those surfaces. And here, this great, I love this plan. Like, what? Oh my God! Whoever had to build that, I'm sorry. And yeah, that's like that weird roof over the stair. The man was a maniac. Here's an aerial view of Casa Mila. You can see these towers. So the roof was meant to be like a common space, with these sculptural towers and vents that are like, the vents are made interesting. This wonderful abstract and figurative sculpture. You can see in the background the Sagrada Familia, the church that is still not finished. There's a plan to finish it sometime in this coming decade. So a church in Barcelona. Park building, come on. It's a cake. That's so wonderful. It is a gingerbread house. There is a gingerbread house. Man. Glass display case. This seating, I love just the very creative, the tile, like the mosaic is, it looks, it's really, I would have to say, intentionally like a big collage. It looks haphazard. That is by design. And, it's a very modern idea that, you don't really have to, he's following his own rules that he has created for himself. He's definitely influenced by, like the Spanish, like the Spanish version of like Baroque was very ornamental like this. Like, I guess, it's not actually not that much of it's not such a stretch that, with the way Spanish Baroque looked, that Gaudí would appear. But man, that is impressive. So he was very, and texture is clearly very important to him, and just creating these very interesting spaces to be in. I mean, why not? I mean, if you're going to design something, why not make it interesting to be in? Why would you bother otherwise? But I love he just loved having these irregular columns. They did not have to be like that. They really, it would be more logical, practical, and probably cheaper to just make it straight. But that's boring. And I'm glad that there, people like Gaudí have been around to liven things up. Now here at Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, he worked on this for a long time, and it almost doesn't look real. If you look closely, so yeah, there we go. There's a Romanesque, Gothic, and Baroque Spanish church, the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, and this is worked on from the 12th to the 18th century. So there's a lot going on. It's kind of rough and a lot of ornament there. A lot of ornament there. But look at that. This is, if you look closer at it, you see all this. It is all very deliberate, and either in its carving. I wonder if some of that was like cast concrete. I should really find out. You can see like to the lower left there, Gothic trefoil window, sorta, an iguana or a chameleon. But man, that is like it looks like they built a building and then they just like dumped concrete on it and let it slowly drip down and dry. And these spires, pardon my neighbor's noisy dogs. This is a outsider art in Los Angeles, Watts Towers, which, looking at these spires made me think about Watts Towers. This is just made by a guy who lived in the Watts neighborhood in Los Angeles, and it's all scrap metal. Not an artist, like, not trained as an artist. He just made it over the course of a long period of time, over decades. And there's Sagrada Familia. This was the church as of 1960. Yeah, and it is. So yeah, Sagrada Familia is still not quite finished. Is the portal of the Nativity. So you can see like one side of it is much more, has got more of the detail. That's a little more understated by comparison. So that's Gaudí, Spanish Art Nouveau, kind of doing his own thing, but definitely related to the French and the Belgians. So that's what I have for you this evening. Please remain patient, and I will finish the next quiz soon. And it will be centered on the 19th century. I'll go back a little bit into the late 18th century because I want to ask you some things about Chippendale. But, at this point, with the neoclassical stuff, you don't have to remember all of it, and you're not going to remember all of it. The idea with, taking a class like this, you get a lot of information. You'll become familiar with a lot of these, styles and periods, and you'll have an idea of where they come from. So, in the future, you'll recognize them, or you can look at something and you think, that's a kind of neoclassical. You at least would know where to look if you needed to look up information. So, like the neoclassical of the late 18th century, and then all of these revival styles, you will not have to keep all of them straight, but you would need to know something like there is such a thing as Gothic revival that happened in the 19th century. And maybe you would know that the Houses of Parliament are an example of Gothic revival in the 19th century. Like that. That's kind of like the level that you would need to be at. You need to know about arts and crafts movement because it's kind of an outlier in the 19th century, in the Victorian era, because it runs against the grain of the 19th century by rejecting a lot of what those revival styles embrace. And similar to the appearance of some of the Art Nouveau, and certainly someone like Frank Lloyd Wright. So there are those people who are they're working at the same time, but they are trying to do something different and new. Okay, any questions?
No, not really.
What do you think of these things that we looked at?
I especially enjoyed the Gaudi.
Yeah,
I, Compared to Belgian and French, it's so much more kind of because it's all a lot of it is concrete. It's so much more substantial, and I think that's why I like it. The other stuff looks kind of you know flimsy to me.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
By
this last
comparison,
one is really beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, it's really. And I love this. I mean, it is a little bit aggressive, like like with this like really heavy, the heaviness of it. But man, it's beautiful.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and and you can imagine, like these, like this 1905.
That's especially interesting. Is that like a little stove over there, or what is
It's a
that?
little, let me enlarge that. It looks like it is yes, this is like a stove, and it's like the,
So is it like a sitting
fireplace stove,
space, or it's like a fireplace
a
and
little
it's in a little
fireplace.
niche.
So
Yeah.
it's a little like fireplace area, and this is the, like chimney.
hmm Yeah, it looks pretty cool. And that ceiling, that kind of looks like almost like an upside down ice cream. Looked very, very cool.
Yeah, the crackly look. It's funny because it looks like it's just sort of like, in a way, it looks kind of aged, but that was a very deliberate choice, and I'm sure
hmm
it took just as much skill to make that as to make anything else.
Yeah. And yes, it is very organic.
Yeah.
Very.
Yes, organic. Yes, if I ask you, you know, to identify a trait of Art Nouveau, organic would be one of them. Probably, possibly the most important one is that Art Nouveau is organic, or that it has an organic appearance.
Yes, a lot of like free flowing lines.
Yep.
You don't know where it's going.
Flow, growth, it's meant to look alive.
That's exactly what it looks like, yes.
And which it really, I think, is an interesting counterpoint to, um, you classicism from, which really was, started,
Very like
thousand- you
orderly
know,
and
2,000 or 2,500 years earlier. That could be considered dead.
Mhm.
Okay, that is the end of the evening's presentations.